Komputasi kuantum bukan lagi cerita fiksi ilmiah. Teknologi ini nyata, berkembang, dan siap mengubah dunia data dan keamanan. Bagaimana teknologi kuantum bekerja, apa dampaknya untuk data dan keamanan digital, dan langkah konkret apa yang bisa Anda ambil hari ini. Bloomberg Technos Podcast, Technozone bersama Pandu Sastrowardoyo dan Jean Daniel Gauthier.
Hello, my name is Pandu Sastrowardoyo. Welcome to Bloomberg Technos Podcast, Technozone. Today, we step into the strangest and possibly most powerful corner of computing, the quantum realm. Quantum computing is not just theoretical anymore. It is evolving fast. It is not just in labs, not just by scientists. It has consequences throughout industries. Here's one reason you should care today. The encrypted files you send through WhatsApp, through email, the ones that you think are safe, attackers are already saving them to decrypt later in the future using future quantum computes. As you know, I have spent nearly 2 decades doing crypto and IT. I was an early adopter to AI, I was an early adopter to Bitcoin, and I'm telling you now, this is the time that you early adopt this. This is the time that you quantum proof your data and understand why this is urgent. Let's unpack this urgency. This episode is about understanding the technology and unpacking everything to make sure that you profit and you understand what to do. Our first speaker is Julian, the IBM Quantum Ambassador, calling in from Singapore. Hello, Julian.
Happy to be here. Thanks, everyone.
He is going to provide practical insight about how IBM is integrating quantum tech into cloud, financial services, and critical infrastructure. We also have Professor Saputra, professor and national tech strategist. Hello, Professor.
Hi, good to be here.
He's a quantum and cyber defense expert with a PhD from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. He's helped found the Indonesian Science Fund, co-chairs the ASEAN Supercomputing Task Force, and now teaches at the Indonesian Defense University, focusing on quantum computing and national tech strategy. He also co-founded the Indonesian Olympiad in Informatics in 1996.
That's long ago.
Not that long, sir. So, we also have, as our co-host, Jean Daniel Gauthier. Hello, Danny.
Hi, it's nice to be here.
Danny is, of course, a tech entrepreneur with 20 years of IT experience, cryptography savvy for having co-founded several blockchain startups, focused on the current breakthroughs on processor architecture, including quantum computing. He's been hosting podcasts as well, including for Bloomberg Technozone. All right, so let's get straight into it. I'm going to start with the first, basically key discussion point, why we're all here. What is quantum computing and how does it differ from classical computing? Why does it matter? So I'm going to start with the professor here. Can you give us a quick overview?
Sure. Well, let's see. Before we talk about the quantum computer, let's talk 2 things.
Yes.
First, what is this quantum? The word quantum, because we talk about quantum computing. If we don't understand the word quantum, that's probably we could be misled later. But also, we also need to go back to the history of quantum computing, right? So, the word quantum is actually quite related with the word quantity that we use a lot. Quantum, quantity, right? It comes from the quantum mechanics, where quantum is a least or minimal amount of a particular physical entity or physical property.
Right.
Like, for example, light.
Right.
Light is seen as a discrete of photons. So one photon is called one quantum of light. So the minimum amount of physical entity that is used as a building blocks.
Right.
So light is a continuous stream of photons. So quantum is used, or quanta, the plural form of quantum, is used to as a building blocks in the study of quantum mechanics, which is much different from the classical mechanics, which was discovered by Isaac Newton
Right.
maybe 300, 400 years ago in the 17th century.
Now that's a long time ago.
That's a long time ago. Yeah, and then but the quantum phenomena, this quantum mechanics has been developed since Schrödinger, Einstein, so the past maybe almost a decade now. But in fact the Richard Feynman in 1965 actually received a Nobel Prize for his work in quantum mechanics. But then in 1991, let me take back to the history of the birth of this quantum computing. 1991, it was summer, May, early summer in the campus of MIT. There was this the first conference on the physics of computations. Yes, 1981, and great minds were there, including Richard Feynman, and he then delivered a speech. Said then that was the birth. He shared his vision that this universe is not classical. It's quantum. So if we want to build the more precise computation model, we should go quantum. And that was the first envisioned of quantum computing.
That's awesome. That's the birth.
Yeah, that's a birth. So now let's see what is a quantum computer. Well, quantum computer is similar in many ways with classical computers. It uses circuits, logics, algorithms, and all that. But what makes it different is that the way the information is processed in quantum computing. In classical computing, we have bits, 0 and 1, which is the on and off of a current.
Yes.
But in quantum computing, we use qubits or quantum bits. And there are two main properties that makes it that opens a world of possibilities that are not available in the classical computer. With the first one is superposition. It's it's a fact that the observation that a system can be in more than one state at the same time.
Right.
Superposition, right?
At the same time.
At the same time, and
not just 0 or 1, but 0 and 1.
0 and 1 at the same time, right? Let's. Do you have a coin? Anyone has a coin?
I happen to have a coin. Would you prefer a cat?
I would prefer a Bitcoin. So this is a coin, right? We can flip it over on the air, or I can spin it here. Let's see. This is head and tail, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
it's
you can
in
see
tails.
it, yeah?
I can see it.
Let's spin it. See, while it's spinning, what's the state? Is it head or tail?
Both.
Both,
At the
right?
same time.
That's an illustration of superposition. That
Awesome.
means a system can be in two or more than multiple states at the same time.
Thank you.
All right. The second principle that makes qubit unique is the principle of entanglement. This entanglement is actually mind-boggling. Even Einstein, when it was discovered, he thought that there must be something wrong with the calculations.
Something might have been calculated wrong.
Right. And then he said it's spooky.
Spooky action at a distance.
Spooky action at a distance.
Right.
It's like what happens because an entanglement, when two qubits are entangled, then the operations done in one particular qubit can be influence the others. And imagine you have multiple qubits, or even now we have more than up to thousands of qubits theoretically. This makes it quantum computer open up world of possibilities. So compared to classical computer, a quantum computer is like, let's say we want to have, you want to play a game of chess, and using a classical computer, you can predict what kind of, the move that your opponent might most likely take, right? That move. But that will take a long time because you have to calculate every possible combinations one by one.
Right.
Whereas using quantum computer, you can do it simultaneously, all these possibilities, so it will take a fraction of the time,
Right.
right? So
At the same time.
at the same time. So in a way, for problems like this, quantum computer is superior to classical computer.
But only for several types of problems, right?
Exactly. So it is important to understand that quantum computer is not super computer. It does not replace the existing classical computer,
Of course.
but it complements what's existing. So certain types of problems are very hard to solve using classical computer, but it's easy to solve using a quantum computers, and vice versa. So this classical computer and quantum computers should be used complementary. So
That's fascinating, sir.
yes.
We'll get back to you. I'm going to let Danny ask the next question.
So, the example he gave with this game of chess, looking through all possibilities of the next move one by one,
Yeah.
that reminds me of what happens when you try to crack the encryption of
Yes.
certain files using certain algorithms. Sometimes the only way to know the key of a certain type of encryption is to try every possibilities one by one, and that leads us to our next question, because this is a term that we are reading and hearing more and more, and I'm gonna ask Julian for this. What is quantum cryptography?
Yeah, so quantum cryptography is basically the leveraging of quantum mechanical effects, right, for the purpose of cryptography, right? I will break it down into two parts, right, because there's really one part where you actually use a quantum enabled machine to do the cryptography, right, such as using photons and entanglements of photons, right, in the transmissions of data, and then because of the uncertainty principle, right, you know, then no copy, phenomenon, right? So no cloning phenomenon, right? So if somebody eavesdrops on you, you can actually know about it. That's largely known as QKD, right? Quantum key distributions, right? So there's another branch of quantum cryptography, right? Or rather, we know it as post-quantum cryptography, that is not using quantum, right, in any of its techniques. It's a mathematical equation. It's basically a math question that even a quantum computer finds it incredibly hard to solve, right? So let me bring you back to why quantum computers are so good at breaking cryptography potentially, right? We know of this as a P and Q problem, right? So most modern cryptography are based on the prime number factorizations of two very, very large numbers to create an even much larger number, right? So for example, the gold standard, 2048 bit RSA, right, is a 616-digit decimal number, right? So if you were to use classical supercomputers to try to break it down into its prime factors that creates this big number, right? It takes most powerful supercomputers perhaps hundreds and thousands of years or even millions of years, right? But because quantum computers are very good at doing factorization, right? Namely enabled by the Shor's algorithm, right, which was invented by Dr. Shaw in 1993, right? It brings down these computational tasks from millions of years right down to hours, if not minutes, right? So that creates a new paradigm of threat where today's cryptography are no longer relevant, secure against future quantum attacks, right? Which herald in the requirements of ripping out standard cryptography as we know it today and replacing it with a new class of cryptography that is not quantum based, but it's just a math problem that is quantum computers also find it very hard to solve, right? And those are being rolled out, right, by multiple organizations around the world today, right, including NIST, right, and there are certifications of those standards, right? So that is in a nutshell, right, the class of cryptography known as PQC or quantum safe.
Awesome. Let me have this follow-up question, Danny, since there are actually two things here, right? Like Julian, so first of all, quantum cryptography itself, using like the physical aspects of it, to actually make sure that the data isn't basically attacked by an attacker. The data isn't so it's used for key distribution, for example, right? And the other aspect is actually utilizing regular mathematics, so not the physical aspects of it, but regular mathematics, to actually ensure that, so take it out of the scope of what quantum computers can solve, correct? So two different things. Are people already doing the first one though? I'm curious about quantum cryptography itself. Is that something that's already being done practically?
Oh yeah. So Singapore is a good example of that, right? So Singapore has this program called the National Quantum Safe Networks, right? And the commercialization of this via a test bed is called the National Quantum Safe Network Plus, right? And they're doing a nationwide, where the fibers are being used, right, to do point to point, right, Alice to Bob, right, type of QKD implementations, right? There's also such rollouts, right, in London, right, in Seoul, Korea, right? So there are pockets of such activities taking place, but just a bit of practicality here, right? This is still a pretty nascent technology, so there's a lot of challenges in terms of the distance where the photons can fire before it becomes decoherent, right? That's how do you secure that QKD box, right? Zero trust, right? Certifications, right? So there's still multiple challenges. Bit rate, right? Another one, right? So it's still a long way to come, but they are starting to have some activities, right, around test beds, I would say. Not commercial rollout for sure.
From the mathematical aspect of this, though, in terms of creating quantum proof computing, I hear that there is still something that is of a concern, as in there are people who are doing harvest now, decrypt later, and basically taking all of the data using regular attacks, and then just keeping them until basically we have quantum compute ready. So can you speak more about this?
Yeah, sure, right. So that's called the decrypt now, harvest now, decrypt later type of attacks, right? So so there's a time value to data, right? So for example, right, if bad actors harvest my I don't know, right, the Amazon transactions from last week, right, a decade from now, I probably wouldn't worry about it, right? But for things like blueprints to the 747 Boeing jet, right, the architectural diagrams to the energy grid, right, the utility, and all that for national critical infrastructures, right, those stay in place for a tremendously long time, right? The IoT devices capability that goes into planes, into cars, into trains, right, that goes into deployment for a long time to come, right? Those are going to be in serviceable life, right, beyond the threat window of quantum attacks, right? Which makes this a phenomenally challenging task, right, in terms of finding these cryptography where they exist, replacing them with modernized versions of quantum safe cryptography, right? So just to step back a little bit as well, right? We're not saying that all cryptographies are at risk, right? If we were to cut it by half, right, there's symmetrical cryptography, there's asymmetrical cryptography, right? So symmetrical cryptographies is not really at risk of quantum attacks, right? You can increase hash lengths, right, and kick the can down the road, right? So it's an exponential speed up, right, trend, but you can kind of kick it down the road. Right? The one that's really vulnerable is the asymmetrical cryptography. These are the RSA, right, Diffie-Hellman, right, elliptical curve, right? So those are the ones that's really at risk and needs to be replaced, right?
Yes, but don't RSA ACC basically dominate a lot of the financial solutions?
Exactly, including Bitcoins.
Yeah, Bitcoins is under threat.
Yeah, it is.
No comment. I would like
if they
to
don't change that.
yeah, they do need to do that. They do need
Yes.
to do that. I would like to really focus though on like from the nation state perspective,
Sure,
sir, if that's
sure.
possible. We heard from Singapore
Yes.
that there's actually a lot of like the things that they're doing. Like obviously that was about quantum cryptography.
Yes, yes.
But at least quantum proofing as well. Like, is Indonesia also doing this, sir? If you can share.
Sure. I can share from the Indonesian perspective as also from the ASEAN perspective because I chair
Of course.
the ASEAN HPC task force. In fact, we are in the process of changing the name. That's not HPC but HAQ,
HAQ.
which HPC, AI, quantum computing.
That's
Because these are the three pillars of computation now. HPC, the classical computer, AI, and QC, quantum computing. Now, thanks, Julian, for sharing what Singapore has done so far. I would say that among ASEAN countries, 10 member states of ASEAN, Singapore is leading in terms of quantum computing.
Wow.
I have to admit that a lot of initiative has been undergoing in Singapore. You have this national Center for Quantum Technology and at NUS as well as at Nanyang, and also the MAS, the Central Bank of Singapore, is
Right.
very proactive. They have issued advisories to all the banking and financial industries about this. This is something that needs to be followed by other ASEAN countries, including Indonesia. We need to get ready for this. So far, there are almost 200 countries in the world. Only 29 countries has already a national quantum initiative in place. Only 29 out of.
What about advisories, sir? Like as you mentioned, MAS,
Yes,
a monetary authority, they've given at least advisories.
Yes, yes.
Is that something that our agencies are already doing?
I'm not aware. We've been trying to talk to the authority in this area, but I think very soon we will. We have seen. I'm happy that in the last few months we have seen some movement. Some ministries and some agencies are kind of waking up to this threat. So I think this is something that we need to push further. We need to have an immediate directive from the top leadership,
Right.
because this is very strategic. Actually, not only that this is about threat or security threat, but also if we miss this bandwagon, we also miss the opportunity, because there are two sides of it: opportunity for economic growth, but also the security threat.
Security
Yeah,
threat,
those
yeah.
two things
Yeah,
that needs to be
Yeah.
done. Yeah.
There's also an aspect of financial threat as well, right?
Sure. For example, the U.S. has the president has former presidents has issued several executive orders related to quantum computer security threat. So we also need we are different. We have our own context, but still we need to wake up to the potential opportunity as a growth engine, but also at the same time, we have to take care of the security threat.
I agree. I think that's very important. I think Julian also agrees. I would like to give this back to Danny, actually, in terms of the next question.
Yeah. So earlier we talked about RSA, ECC, asymmetrical encryption, and those are encryption methods that I think it bears underlining are available to massively available. They are used mostly everywhere to attest the security, the safety of websites, for instance. That's one of the things we see the most. But for many kind of encryption and for many kind of encryption of very vital data, very sensitive data. And we heard, you just told us that this omnipresent, very available algorithms are under threat by quantum computing, quantum decryption, because of the very nature of the architecture of the thing, right? But on the other hand, we hear about quantum safe cryptography, a cryptography that would escape the realm of what a quantum computer could decrypt. But first up, is it as available as, let's say, RSA? And second, like, how does it even work? Is it hash based? Is it lattice based? Is it market ready? How can you tell us everything?
Well, let's start with Julian, I guess, and then we go to the professor. Go ahead, Julian.
Yeah, sure. Right. So basically, this is not a new discovery that is recent, right? NIST, for example, they already have been watching this for a long time. They know it's coming. So in 2016, there's a call for algorithms, right? Cryptographers, super smart people from all over the world submitted their submissions, went through 4 rounds of evaluations, right? Those that fails evaluation drops out, right? And finally, in August of last year, right, 3 candidates were kind of released, right? So these are the Crystal Kyber, Crystal Dilithium, right, and things, right? So Crystal Kyber, Crystal Dilithium, these are lattice-based, right, encryption techniques, right? And then things, right, is hash-based cryptographic techniques. So given that quantum computers are so nascent, right, and there's new discovery, new algorithms, right? Who knows whether there's going to be a new algorithm that exposes lattice-based, right? Algorithms to also the same vulnerability. We don't really know, right? Hence, there's round 2, round 3 submissions, right? That's taking place that try to diversify the threat, right, into a variety of basket rather than put all your eggs in the same type of cryptographic techniques, right? So there's more of this that's coming around, right? That's for sure. We are not done yet. So which brings that to an important point, right? We are no longer in the position to view security, right, in the way that we've been managing security the last several decades, right? We are into this space where you always need to be on your toes, right, and adopt what we call crypto agility. Right, that means you must think about, actively managing cryptography, including where your cryptography exists within your enterprise. Right, an example of that is we've been taking cryptography for granted for so long, right? That if you ask any CSO or CISO, right, where does cryptography exist within your enterprise, right? I'm pretty sure nobody can put their hands up and say, I know exactly where it is, right? So think of it as a pack of nails, right? You build a house, a wooden house, right? You take a nails, you bang, 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 your house is there for 10, 20 years. And then let's say, there's a recall, right? The manufacturer of nails, this is a little bit far off, but, let's say, for example, the manufacturer of nails says, oh, there's a defect in the nails, right? It corrodes after 25 years. So you have a 5-year window to replace your nails, right? But who is going to have an idea of where each nail went into the house, right? So it's impossible. So having that cryptographic bill of material is going to be something that's going to be, managed actively going forward, right? So it brings back to the point, right? So the governance of security within enterprise needs to be on the basis of having crypto agility, which means that active management, monitor what's new coming into the quantum realm, right? The threat vectors that exist, and then how do you quickly monitor and remediate those threats that exist, right? So that's the new state we got to go into.
So before we go to the professor for his answer, I'd like to add. I'd like to ask as well. This has been like a future issue for years. Like as in everyone with an IT education actually knows that quantum computing is coming, and we know that people are already collecting data, encrypted data to decrypt later. But I don't see I don't see people realizing the urgency. Do you, in your experience, why is that?
That is very true, right? I mean, if you think about it from the eyes of a business owner, let's say a small and medium business,
Right.
Their main purpose could be, logistic delivery. Their main, purpose could be bread and butter issues, right? How do I get sales out the door, right? So from their point of view, right, and they hear about this, right, and say, am I going to spend $500,000 to replace all my IT with, post-quantum safe, right, equipments, software, middleware, right? The answer is probably going to be no, right, unfortunately, right? And, on the other side of the spectrum, right, governments, right, let's say financial services are down, right, because of this quantum threat, right? It's a big economic impact to the nation. National security is at risk because if you have your, blueprints to your nuclear submarine being exposed, those are very bad things that can happen, right? So what's going to happen in the middle, right? Business are not going to just adopt this, right? They have more bread and butter concerns, right, in front of them, right? So that's where, perhaps legislations will need to be in place, right? We can put an advisory out there, try to coax people to adopt, right? At some point in time, right, for some industry, for example, where it's higher priority, right? I do believe legislations needs to take place, right? With a window so that, you enforce that migrations, right? To get to a happy place, right, where there's a mass adoption of quantum safe cryptography, right? So, but if we take a lesson in history as well, right, vulnerabilities, right, has been happening all over the place, right? Log4j, SHA-1, SHA-2 migrations, right? Those take an awfully long time, right? There's
Right.
TLS 1.0, for example, is still in use today, right? Even though it's recommended to be deprecated a long time ago, right? So, from a Pronoxis standpoint, I'm actually not too optimistic. I think there will be casualties in this, but that's my personal opinion, right? But I think, just to answer your questions, right, I don't see people putting their hands up and say, okay, I'm going to go quantum safe in 2 weeks' time, right?
Which might be unfortunate later on.
I would have
yeah.
a short follow-up question. We're talking a lot about the enterprise sector, the business realm, and everything. But as a user, what does that mean? Because we all know that passwords, for instance, are stored encrypted in databases. We know that our communication on, let's say, messaging apps are also end-to-end encrypted. As a user, who does what users do online? I have my private life. I have sensitive information. Maybe a couple of embarrassing pictures on the cloud, encrypted, of course. Shall I be worried?
Question for me?
Yes.
Is that okay?
For anyone who wants to answer, really.
Go, Julian.
Go ahead, Julian.
Yeah, I think so, right? I mean, it's not that the algorithms to protect ourselves does not already exist, right? In fact, there are already commercial rollouts of quantum safe cryptography. Like I think TLS is quantum safe, right? The IBM mainframe is quantum safe, right? And the process of converting all software stack to quantum safe, right? iMessenger, right, in iPhones is also quantum safe, right? So if you're actively, monitoring these and adopting technologies like that, right, then, you could be protecting yourself. But going back to the enterprise, right, I think what's really, at the top of mind for the CXO level, right, is what happens, right, if these data, are subjected to leaks and bad actors, right? What's the damage to your brand name? Right? Is this a mission critical, bad thing that could happen to you, right? And the answer is yes to any of these, then, there are already things that you can start doing yesterday, right? To start your migrations to quantum safe.
Right. If I can add, Danny, and I'm actually going to answer you for once. Another part of this is the users of cryptocurrency, the other side of crypto, right? So if your crypto is not quantum safe, you as a user, you might actually lose out on money. And this is something that it goes double. Like, first of all, you can lose money. And secondly, like, if a crypto is not ready for quantum and then quantum computing of large scale comes, then you would also lose money because that's going to go down, like in terms of value, right? So that's another part where I think users should be concerned. I would still like, yeah.
You can extend that to blockchain as well, distributed ledgers.
Right.
Yes.
Right. I would basically bring this back to the professor though, since I'm actually interested in one thing, perlindungan data pribadi, PDP. Our Indonesia has personal data protection laws,
Yes,
right? So,
yes.
isn't that also part of this scope as well?
Yes, exactly. This is something, the PDP that includes everything, but also I think there are two, in terms of industry, there are two critical industries that need to be worried most, which is telco and finance industry. These are the two industries that need to run as fast as they can to secure their data, making sure that they are safe, they are quantum safe
Right.
in this case. Now, the reason why I see the reason why some parties are kind of reluctant to adopt steps toward this quantum safe is because unlike the Y2K problem, Y2K you have a exact
Yeah, exact
time
date, yeah.
exactly right. This thing sometimes like I think is the technology is not mature enough. Let's just see, wait and see. Some people say maybe in 2030 and in another 5 years, and so on and so forth. But on the other hand, if an organization, a private organization, a company, a business organizations aware of this, it's not too early to adopt this. It's never too early, because once you adopt this, of course you need to have a transition plan, a smooth transition plan. You weigh the cost and benefit, but you need to have a transition plan. At the first time, you don't need to go cold turkey overnight.
No, yeah.
But there is a transition. You identify critical data that you need to protect most, and so on and so forth, and then transition smoothly, and at the same time watching the standard bodies like NIST,
Right.
because they are working on it, and see which new encryption technology is the winner. Yes, because they are not the wait and see doesn't mean that you don't do anything, but at least do something about it. Start moving. Start with taking an inventory of all your data assets,
Right.
and then start working on it, because otherwise it will be too late when you realize it.
I would like to add that to underline your point,
Yes.
technology is very often iterations on a concept that doesn't seem to work that well, or marginally work, until it suddenly works for everyone.
Yes.
We've seen that with cell phones.
Yeah.
We've seen that with AI. AI was very marginal for a very long time,
Yeah.
and overnight, almost more users than Netflix.
Yes.
And it could very well happen like that for quantum computing
Exactly.
too.
Yes, I think this is going to happen in a similar way. So my advice is get started sooner,
Awesome.
and don't delay. I mean, you don't have to do everything at once, but at least you have to have a plan in place.
Right.
Right.
And taking
Get started.
taking inventory of your data is best
Yes.
practice anyway. right?
Exactly. And then start training your staff. This is human resource development, takes time.
Right.
That takes time. So it's important to start training your staff, prepare them.
Right.
You have IT departments. Some of your IT budget should be dedicated, allocated for that to get ready.
Workforce readiness.
Yes.
Basically, like if they're
Yes.
ready. And also, if you have new.
Yes.
Oh yeah, go ahead. You can add in. Sorry, Julie.
I was just going to add, while you have this time, take advantage of this time to also, in your IT refresh, take advantage of this period of time to update in your procurement policies to only buy quantum safe hardware and software.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Rather
Okay.
than, yeah,
So if you have new systems that you want to put in place, don't
might as well buy a quantum safe system.
make sure it's
Yes.
quantum safe. All right.
And in fact, on that, I think it is important in the BOM, bill of materials.
Yes.
you need to have this when you check the bill of materials. You need to see what kind of cryptography is in
Right,
that device,
right.
right? So it's important to check when you procure something. The BOM check if
That is
that's
a very practical
yes.
advice.
Yes.
And, you know, there's always new IT projects
Yes.
happening everywhere. And I think that's really, really good advice to take.
Well, can I
Alright.
add
ahead.
two more things, right? So I think what we spoke about is a little bit gloomy, a bit fear-mongering, right? But I think we need to take note that quantum computers are a rare commodity, right? They are extremely hard to build, right? So the day one attack is not going to be suddenly in binary and everybody's at risk, right? It's going to be very targeted. The most vulnerable or most secretive organizations are probably going to be the number one target, right? Not the consumer, you, me per se, right? Or hopefully, at least I hope it's not me, right? Yeah,
So
so
critical
day one attack is going to
infrastructure,
be,
definitely.
the critical infrastructure
Yeah.
are probably the ones that is going to be vulnerable. But we also need to take a lesson in the history a little bit, right? When during World War II, right? When the Enigma, coding machine, right, was kind of decrypted, right, by the Allies, right? Nobody spoke about it, right? It's like, I'm just happily listening to the Germans. I understand their plan, right? I build my plans around it. I pretend that I have not cracked their codes, right? Type of effect, right? So no nation is going to say that, oh, I really have a cryptographically relevant quantum computers. I'm listening to everybody. That's not going to happen as well, right? So those are all, lesson in history that, are going to be useful. I think if once we start to rationalize, right, our PQC plans as well.
There's been discussions though about like whether any nation states are secretly developing quantum hardware that is like more advanced than ones that are public, and keeping their cards close to the chest and decrypting before revealing. So that's also a concern.
Isn't there China that has published now advances in photonic quantum computing like very recently, right?
Yes, very very recently, and that's the published version of the state actors. I'd like to talk about something that's I think closer to us since we're I'm ex IBM and you're in IBM. How are companies like IBM approaching quantum hardware? Like we've been talking about quantum proof, we've been talking about quantum safe. IBM is one of the leaders in actual quantum computing hardware. So I want to know who's actually ahead. Like if you can reveal that, and how do we separate like basically this progress from just like all the press release? We want to understand what different approaches that you're taking and how fast are you accelerating?
I think you should not ask that question to an IBM ambassador. You can ask that question to me.
Go ahead, sir.
Sure.
Okay, professor. All right.
Because
I'm sorry, Julian.
you work for IBM. I'm not. I'm on academics.
We'll let you have your say later. Let you have your say later. But let's start with the professor.
But
Go ahead.
I think this is not me, but I'm watching the development. Also looking at the reports from Gartner and all that. Yes, so far I would say the winner is IBM.
Okay.
The leading, even though I'm not an IBM, but it's different, right? If you ask Julian.
All right.
So in terms of the technology, superconducting, IBM is leading, and I think among the photonics, ion trap, and all that, the most advanced at this point is the superconducting quantum computer, and in this realm, it is IBM that's leading, like off the chart. And also IBM is leading in terms of education.
Right.
Lots of education materials are issued, published by IBM for free. This is something that industry organizations should take advantage of.
IBM Q, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. learning.quantum.ibm, something like that. So that's something. I'm not advertising. I'm not paid by IBM to do it, but I say I'm using also the IBM resources for teaching my classes.
Awesome. Okay. Do you like to add to that, Julian? Like,
Of course, right? But thanks for the endorsement, right, Professor Sambucho, right? So in IBM research, right, we have two missions around quantum, right? One is to bring useful quantum computing to the world, right? So we are not really caring about solving math problem that has no relevancy to society, right? And then the second mission is really to make the world quantum safe, as if it's a moral responsibility from IBM, right? Because if you bring better and better quantum computers to the world, right, the possibility of quantum threat exists. So our responsibility to make sure that the world remains quantum safe, right? So those are the broad principles of how IBM Research operate around the quantum technologies, including, more recently, right, the ethical use of quantum, right, computing, right, as a technology, right? So in IBM, right, we have a fleet of quantum computers, right, that exists on our cloud, right, for people to use, right. We also have dedicated machines that's on-prem, right, for customers that wants to have dedicated on-prem machines. We also do that, such as the one in my virtual background.
Oh,
Right,
wow.
that's the IBM Quantum System 1. Right. So and we have also been spending a lot of time, energy, money, right, to build talent workforce, right, and educate the world, right, around how do you use these technology space. So last week happened to be a really exciting week for us, right? We announced that we will be building a fully fault-tolerant large-scale quantum computer, right, in 2029, right, in Poughkeepsie, New York, right? So the birthplace of IBM mainframe, right, is where we're going to host that fault-tolerant quantum computer, right? So today's technology that we have is 133, 156 qubits, right? We call it the Heron chip, right? The Starling is the name of the quantum processor that will be 200 logical fault-tolerant qubits. Right?
Fault-tolerant qubits. 200. Okay.
200. Right. So going back to where Professor Sabutro started, right, with superposition entanglement, right, the powers of quantum computer actually raises by 2 to the n, right? So a 2-qubit quantum computer possesses 4 states, it's 2 to the 2, right? And then 2 to the 3, a 3-qubit quantum computer, has 8 states, right? So by the time you get to 127, right, you have enough space representation for every single atoms in the observable universe. Right.
Awesome.
So there's a lot of things that you can do with a 200 qubit fault-tolerant quantum computer. Right. So we do think the Gen AI moment of quantum, it will come in 2029.
I was wondering about that as well, since when we described the types of problems, it seems really lends itself extremely well for the non-deterministic nature of matrix calculations that we have in the vector space of model weights. So that's interesting. We might discuss that in a separate podcast. That would be more in depth.
I'm sorry, I really wanted to add that.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I really wanted to add that because when you look at how quantum computing works, right? Yeah. And when you look at how AI works, especially the current models, right, with tensors,
yes,
matrix calculation, everything, it really looks like it has similarities, at least for someone like me who's not too much into mathematics, right? At what points those two technologies could be either melded together or compete, or what is the intersection in the Venn diagram here?
As I mentioned, we have looked at this the 3 AI with its GPU, HPC with CPU, and quantum computing with QPU. So now we have
quantum processing unit.
Yes, we have QPU, GPU, and CPU. They are the pillars of computation. Right. So there is some intersection, of course, as we said, some intersection between HPC, the classical supercomputer, quantum computer, and AI. There is but each of these 3 has its own specialty that they are very good at, right? AI with its ML model, machine learning model, and then quantum computing to solve many parallel combinatorics problems. It's very very good at polynomial problems and all that. So answering your questions, they are not competing, but they are complementing. Yes, there are some intersection. I would say if you draw a Venn diagram, 3 circles, I would say 3 circles combined together, they are very nice. That's why, as I mentioned, we are transitioning from the name of HPC into HAQ.
That's interesting. That's an interesting transition as well. Like, I
Yes.
mean, HAQ basically is actually going to be defining the future of the world. And that actually brings me to one question that I want to ask, and this takes it more to a macro level. We're all basically competing to get the first quantum computer. Now, the question is whether that would lead to a power imbalance. Like, one of the companies in one of the countries actually dominates and goes there first. Will that, with the world unprepared for quantum computation, won't that cause an imbalance? Is that a huge risk in your opinion?
I think there is already a capacity imbalance already.
Capacity balance.
Yes,
Okay.
already it's already there. If someone was asking me, should we? I mean, our country, Indonesia, is catching up on the effort of building our own quantum computer. I said, no. I think that's a waste at this point with our limited resource. That's not the right strategy.
Shouldn't be the focus at the
It
moment.
shouldn't be that focus
Okay,
at the moment.
okay.
When we get plenty of resources, yes,
Right,
let's do that. But with limited resources, let's focus on more on human resource development, training our youth, for example, our students, because quantum algorithm development, will
Right.
be needed, and that can be a growth engine. If we
Right.
do not need, when we do not have people, students, or no, I mean young people who understand how to develop algorithms of quantum, then who will do that?
Yeah,
Then
that-
we
that's
will
interesting.
have to hire expensive consultants from abroad, right?
Right,
So
right.
if we do it here, we can be consultants for the rest of the world.
Right.
That's actually an opportunity that we have to tap on.
So the quantum advantage is not just a hardware advantage,
Right.
but it's also a brain advantage, a whatware advantage.
Exactly. And other people asking me, do you foresee that a quantum computer will be in a package in a laptop? I don't see it at the moment. Yes, we have.
We need Star Trek technology.
Yes,
But Majorana,
Majorana.
Majorana,
yes,
yeah,
that's
Majorana, yeah.
that's
Maybe explain what Majorana
Yeah.
is first, Danny.
so,
And,
Go ahead.
so basically Microsoft came up
Yeah.
with a new state of matter.
yeah.
They have managed to organize atoms in a very specific configuration where two elementary particles form a new state of matter field that would be resistant to interference. I think they put it 100 interference resistant qubits on a chip. So when you look at a quantum computer right now, it looks like a big chandelier with cables.
Yes, yes.
That's probably very cold inside, and the representations of Majorana are more like the chips we know, like an Intel or AMD chip
yeah.
that you plug into your main board. I think there might be a little misdirection here, but I might be wrong. What do you think?
Well, it's a possibility, but it may take several years to make it a reality. But for practical purposes, I believe in the next decade, the next 10 years, the mode of using quantum computer is cloud-based.
Yeah.
So
Makes sense.
we have because the cheapest quantum computer is about 25 million US dollars, and you just probably need a few seconds of compute time, right? It's not worth it just doesn't justify the cost. So if I just need a few minutes of compute time, quantum, I would rather go cloud computing, at least for the
At
next
least
decade.
for next decade.
Yes,
The
unless
fact that
yeah.
quantum computing is cloud-based is sort of poetic, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a cloud of.
Because if you
Okay.
look at the cloud, it collapses. And
yeah.
sorry.
I'm actually going to let Julian have like a bit of a final say regarding this as well. What do you suggest for like let's bringing this down to sort of like our audience at home for Bloomberg Technos? What would you suggest for people who run companies, who invest, who are in the business, who are doing cryptography? Like, what would you suggest to them?
Yeah, I mean, for the cryptography space, I think it's pretty straightforward, right? PQC standards are there, fully FIPS certified by NIST, right? Open source, ready to adopt, right? So there's no reason to wait, right? For quantum computing, it's so again, right? I've been in this industry for several decades now, right? And I've been growing up since I was a young kid, right, to now, right. The promises of quantum computer has been coming, going, right. That didn't really take place. I think we are firmly right now, right, in the era of quantum utility, very shortly to what we call quantum advantage. So we are already here now today, right? So for companies that has not enough awareness, right? Let's wait a couple more years. I think this is going to be so disruptive that it's going to be very hard to imagine, right, what's going to happen, right, if you don't be an early enough adopter, right, of this technology, right. So if you just take it back to how technology breakthroughs, right, in civilization, right, we did not imagine what the steam engine could do for industrialization. We did not realize how cloud, right, could completely change, or internet could change e-commerce, right? And the question today is, what are we going to do with a quantum computer, right? We might have some ideas, but I think in reality, right, is that, the quantum natives that's born today, grow up thinking quantum, right, is going to be reinventing technologies, right? Who knows what we'll be carrying in our phones and pockets or embedded, right, somewhere in our body, right, 3 decades from now, right?
Right.
So that's very incredible to think about it, right? So going back to technology, right? There are a lot of noise, right, in the industry, right? And in IBM, we see as our mission to cut through the noise, right? And that's the reason why we publish a very detailed roadmap, right? So that our clients have absolutely full confidence about what technology will be coming, right? We made, Qiskit, for example, completely open source, right? So that it's free. There's a community of contributors, right, to Qiskit, right? And we believe that we have the best and the only viable path to scaling quantum computing, right? Towards that 2029, Starlink processor that I just talked about, right? So in terms of learning, right, the IBM Quantum Network, right, is a community of learning, co-creation, discussions, right, and all that great stuff, right? Those learning materials are completely free on the IBM website, right? Anybody can go to ibm.com and create access to a real quantum computer for free for up to 10 minutes every month, so that they can learn, experiment on this technology. So we're making it as frictionless as possible, right, for people to learn, adopt, and embrace this technology, right? And of course, if they need help, right, universities are there. We work with researchers, right, incubate a use case, right, think about POCs and deployment, right, our latest, greatest machine, or I come to companies like IBM and vendors out there, right? So those are, probably the best thing I can advise right now.
Thank you, Julian. I'm afraid we're out of time. We're going to actually close this. I would like to thank our experts for collapsing uncertainty into clarity. And to you, the audience, keep asking questions. This is tech that is powerful. It is very strange, but it is real. Encryption can be broken in hindsight. Machine learning can be reinvented with quantum logic. I think that should all give us pause. And we'll see you in the next episode of Bloomberg Techno's podcast, Technozone.